All right. Hi, everyone. We are live with another Dapr community call. My name is Cecil Phillip. I'm one of the community managers here. And welcome to Community Call 101. We have a really great agenda packed for y'all today. Today, we're going to have Alice and Fernando, who are both from Diagrid, and they're going to be talking to us a little bit about one of their new projects that they have called Conductor. Right? And not only that, it's not really a new project, but the fact that they have a new free tier that we could all start making use of as we're building like stuff with Dapr or Kubernetes. So really excited to hear about that. And then right after that, we're to kind of just jump right into our show and tell. We have tons of community folks doing videos and blog posts and all this types of stuff. And we definitely want to make sure we highlight those and give those folks some recognition for all the hard work that they do. So we're going to do that right after. But before we get into all that, why don't we just start with some brief introductions? Fernando, I see you're unmuted. Why don't you start first? Why don't you tell folks a little bit about
I was unmuted. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. My name is Fernando Rocha. I'm a customer success engineer here at Diagrid. I work with Alice on a lot of cool products like Conductor and Catalyst and Dapr most importantly. So it's very good to be here, very be able to share all of the cool information we have to share with
you. Nice. Alice, you want to go next?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Cecil. My name is Alice Gibbons. I have the exact same role as Fernando, so I'm also a customer success engineer here at Diagrid. And yeah, we get to work with Dapr users every day in terms of, helping them with their issues as they go to production, but then doing like things like architecture and proof of concepts with them as well. So yeah, happy to be here.
Nice. So again, thank you all for joining us. And for all of you that are watching, thank you for joining us as well. Actually, while you're go ahead and watch, why don't you let us know in the chat, like, where are you watching from? Because I'd love to hear where, folks that are doing Dapr are, what countries you are, what types of stuff that you're working on. Go ahead and feel free to go and, drop some messages for us in the comments. And I will also be taking questions too. So as Alex and Fernando are going through their conversations, showing us demos and stuff like that, feel free to go ahead and ask some questions. We'll pull them up whenever, whenever we can, and try to make sure we get them answered for you live on camera. So with that being said, I think Fernando, you're going to start first. So why don't we go ahead and get into Diagrid Conductor. And there you go. All right, your screen's up.
Yes, just making sure that I'm sharing the presentation. Oh, okay, all right.
Yes, sharing the presentation.
Wrong slide. All right, we have a very trimmed out presentation for you today, right? That was for good reasons, because we have a very rich demo to share with you about one of the products that we have here, Conductor Free, right? But I want to start talking about what do we, as one of the Dapr maintainers, know about Dapr development, right? We know because of surveys that we run and because we're very involved in the community that currently over 90% of Dapr production workloads run on Kubernetes, right? We know that you're able to run it in other places. We know that you're able to do deploying different things. You're able to self-host if you want, but the reality is that over 90% of everyone that's using Dapr today run their workloads on Kubernetes. And that just is here to say that how popular Kubernetes is in the cloud native environment, how well it works, and how well built and maintained all of the distributions that we have and all of the cloud providers that people are using, right? But because of that, developers need to be a little bit more complete today, right? We can't only be worrying about building and working on the business logic of our application, building those beautiful designs that our customers love to see, right? We need to be a little bit more worried about the operations side of things as well, right? How Kubernetes works, how different microservices architectures can be built in Kubernetes, if Kubernetes is working properly, right? If our cluster is running correctly, if our pods are running correctly, if all of our applications are working properly, right? So developers today, they need to be smarter about how they build things. They need to have a lot more knowledge and a lot more concerns about how to run their applications, especially in developer mode, right? Because some of us are running solo in this area before we start pushing things to production in different And we also know, because of surveys that we ran with over 150 developers, that Dapr does improve productivity for all of those developers. So developers are running faster, developers are producing code faster, deploying faster, and they're able to be more productive, right? When they choose to allow Dapr to be one of the tools that they use for their applications. But we also know that Dapr adds a little bit more complexity on top of Kubernetes, right? Because you add a couple of new containers there, you have a control plane, your sidecar injections, infrastructure interactions. So you need to be aware of how everything is working, right? If it's working properly or not on top of your application. If your application is connecting to your components properly, if if the interaction between your application and the infrastructure is actually functional and without running any and not having any issues. And in developer mode, right, while you're still developing, creating your application, that's a big reality. Developers are left managing their own Kubernetes clusters, right? And sometimes it's hard to get visibility on what you have on top of not only Kubernetes, but how Dapr is working and functioning. And since we do with open source products, there is documentation scattered around a lot of different places. So sometimes it's hard to find the best way and best practice to run a particular application. So, and that's why Conductor exists, right? Conductor, especially the Conductor free version, which was released a few weeks ago during KubeCon Paris. It is meant for individual developers. They're building and testing their applications on Kubernetes, right? And let me say that again, it is free for developers to use, so you don't pay anything for that. And what Conductor does overall, we're going to take a look at it. We're going to dive much, much deeper into what it does, right? But you're going to see an aggregated view of all of your Dapr-enabled clusters within a particular organization. So it facilitates the management of all of your operations, right? All of your clusters. It makes it very easy to understand if you're running things smoothly or if you need to improve a thing or two. But what do you need to do to make it work, right? How does it work? So there are a couple of pieces to it. So as we all know, once you add Dapr to your development process, it adds a few containers here, it adds a few operations that you need to maintain, right? You need to make sure they're running properly. So Conductor helps you understand that in two different ways. So the first one, it adds a Conductor agent, which is responsible for monitoring the Dapr control plane in your connected cluster. It fully manages the control plane if you have configured the Conductor to run some operational tasks like installing Dapr, installing metric servers. It facilitates that process a lot. It also has another container called the Diagrid Agents Log Collector, which runs a log collector container that's responsible for collecting logs from the Dapr sidecars into the cluster, right? And the only thing that you need to have really is outbound connectivity from your cluster to the Diagrid cloud, okay? And install your agent in the cluster, right? It's a process that takes less than 30 seconds. I'm going to show you how to do it. It's extremely easy. The cluster today, the agent today is our cloud actually today is SOC 2 Type 1 compliant, but we're pursuing Type 2 at this moment, right? So it's a very good piece of information to have, because if we're talking Kubernetes, we're talking to a lot of security people who are always worried about things. So a little peace of mind for them. And what is included in Conductor Free, right? What are the type of features that we provide free to use to our customers to make sure that they can manage their Dapr environments properly? So you have optimal control plane configuration. You have installation and management for local Kubernetes clusters, right? You can install it on Minikube, kind. You can also have EKS environments, AKS, GKE, whatever you want to use, right? We test Conductor in a plethora of different Conductor Kubernetes distributions. Ease your mind. You have automatic advisories for best practices. So if Conductor sees something that's not really how it should be, right? You're gonna get notifications. You're gonna get triggered, and you're gonna have a view It's pretty simple to understand what's going on there. All the advisories are separated into 3 different categories: high, medium, or low. You will see not only Alice is going to show all of that to you, but you're going to see not only the advisory um, properly described to you, but also a way to fix it, and the proper documentation to go to, right, that explains how to fix that problem and why something is a best practice. We have version support notification. We're working with an open source product, so there are a lot of releases coming up. It has a properly set cadence for releases, right? But you have hot fixes, you have security fixes that sometimes come out. So you need to be aware of them. You need to be able to not only that upgrade when something comes out, but test it very quickly, right? To make sure that your application is working in different Dapr versions once they come out. So that's why we provide not only the notifications, but also one-click Dapr upgrades. Make sure that you very easily can change Dapr version, test your application, roll back if needed, etc. Okay, now, let's get into Conductor itself. Right, I'm gonna start by showing you how to set up a cluster on Conductor. Right, I have a project running on Minikube here, a demo project that's basically an order system, right? It has different pods running here. I'm not sure if this is big enough. Let me make it a little bigger for you to see. I have a small microservice project running here. It's an order system. It has different services that do different independent things, right? I'm not going to go too deep into this right now, but I already have Dapr installed in this particular cluster, and everything's running relatively fine, right? At least now I can see that, right? But let's see if that's really the full reality of it. So once you create your account, your free account, you see a brief video on how Conductor Free works. And then you get it. The first view that you're going to see is the clusters view, right? Where you can connect your first cluster. So I can just go to connect cluster here. I'll call it order system in this case. As I mentioned to you before, you have a lot of Kubernetes distributions to choose from. Diagrid tests Conductor very thoroughly against all of these distributions here. So to make sure that it works and you have a proper production environment to run that you can trust. For some of these distributions, right, you will need to install some prerequisites. That's solely in our documentation. If you want to look, all of the prerequisites that are necessary to run Dapr run Conductor, the Conductor agent in your cluster. In this case, I want Conductor to do that for me, install the metric server. And I also want Conductor to install Dapr, right? So even though Dapr is already there, I can install Dapr there without any issues. I can choose the Dapr version here, right? Without any problem. And I can choose to roll out all of the applications or choose some of the applications that I have on my environment. So at this point, let me create this cluster. It is a good idea to let Conductor install all of these prerequisites for you and manage Dapr for you, because it's going to use some Helm charts that have a lot of the best practices involved in them already, attached to them already, so you don't have to worry about that too, right? So you can trust Conductor to manage Dapr for you. Now that I have that, Conductor gives me this kubectl apply command here that I can copy, paste it. And at this point, I'm going to have a couple of new namespaces to worry about, right? Not to worry about, but I need to be aware of them, right? So when I look at it, security looks at them and they're, oh, what are those namespaces, right? You're able to explain to them what they are. So we have a couple of namespaces here. So basically we have the Dapr system, which was already created for me because I had Dapr, but if you don't, Conductor is going to install Dapr into this particular namespace. You also have one called Diagrid Cloud. Diagrid Cloud is the one that's going to have the 2 pods, right? The agent collector pod and the Diagrid agent, right? The Conductor agent that's going to collect all of the information. Get back to your cluster connection here. So we have it connected. I can see it already, right? It took very few seconds to go through all of this process, and depending on your connectivity, this is going to be super fast as well. So what do we have here? We have our order system cluster, and we have a couple of things to go through. I'm going to go through some of the features. Alice is going to go much deeper into it. But our idea here is to show you not only from an operations perspective what you can see and do with Conductor, but also as a developer how you can identify issues and fix them right away. So the agent is online. I showed the namespace. Let's take a look at the cluster insights here. What you have the health of your control plane. You have the Conductor agent, which is online. You have the Dapr control uptime. So you see all of those pieces that Dapr uses, right? If they're working properly or not. If they have any type of detriments, if they have any type of issues at this point, they're going to show all here. If you have any high impact advisories, problems that you have in your applications, components, etc., are going to show here. Critical metrics are also going to show here. It takes a little bit of time to sync all of it, right? But you get a lot of different information. It shows the Dapr version, right? The current version that you're running, the agent version also. A lot of insights about apps, errors, critical metrics associated to apps, and high impact advisories associated to apps as well. It shows an app graph, right? How your app is currently working. Also something that Alice is going to go deeper into it. Some insights about your components, right? Pub sub components or other type of components that you have that may have initialization errors or advisories around security, for example. You're going to see them here. There's also something else that I wanted to see is there is a process to update Dapr, right? That you can do it from here as well. So it's pretty easy to do it. If you want to test that, your application against other Dapr versions, you have the ability to do this here, confirm the update, test your application, roll back if needed, whatever you want to do. Last thing that I want to show in the advisor column is when you sync advisories, you should be able to see very quickly here a lot of the different advisories that you're able to see in your application, right? In this particular one, I have a security advisory. I don't have any reliability advisories or observability advisories. But one thing that I should have mentioned is that Conductor acts on top of these three pillars of any type of well-architected pattern that you want to use for architect applications on Kubernetes and cloud providers, right? So you see a lot of different things here. Again, not going too deep into this because Alice is going to cover all of it. I think that's all I had at this point. Alice, if you want to take over from here. Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Fernando. Appreciate it. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay, I'll just share my screen. Give me a second. Yeah, so as Fernando mentioned, you get a lot of stuff kind of for free out of the box with Conductor free, and the ability to connect a single cluster onto a free account is something that we want Dapr developers to be able to do, whether they're running Kubernetes locally on like Minikube or Kind, or whether they want to have like a shared development environment maybe with the rest of their developer team or something like that. So, a few of the other things I just wanted to call out, or some of the things that you get for free with Conductor free. Maybe we should count how many times I say free in this presentation. But, we get this dynamic apps graph, and this is something Fernando touched on super briefly, but essentially, what we have found from working with a ton of different Dapr users is, especially folks who are newer to the Dapr space, it's not always super obvious, what underlying infrastructure your applications are connecting to, as well as like what kind of calls it's making, in terms of if there are any error rates, whether that be, reaching out to your Dapr sidecar or, vice versa from your Dapr sidecar reaching into your application. And that's why we have this application graph that we kind of build just using the metrics data that the Dapr open source project provides. We also have Dapr YAML resource validation. So, one of the things that I found kind of most frustrating in terms of doing Dapr development is, building my component files and ensuring that those are, connected correctly to that underlying infrastructure. So really providing visibility into, all the Dapr CRDs for components, resiliency policies, subscriptions, configurations, and then like being able to kind of, edit those component files directly kind of in the browser. Now that feature itself is still under development, but essentially the ability to have that initialization check kind of done for you so that you realize failures before you get to runtime, which is typically how it works within open source today. And then last but not least, I would just wanted to call out some subscription insights. So, if you're familiar with the Dapr project from a PubSub perspective, you'll know that there's two types of ways you can subscribe to subscriptions via declaratively or programmatic. And essentially figuring out, who, which applications are subscribed to which PubSub services is not super trivial. And then, ensuring that those topics and are scoped to correctly to your subscribing applications is something that's also important from a dev perspective. Last but not least, this is our last slide, I promise. But just a little bit of quicker issue discovery and resolution. So because Dapr kind of lives in that space that is in between your development and your operations team, what we do find is developers have to take on a more operations type of lens in terms of looking into their infrastructure and looking into their their application and how it's hosted, especially on Kubernetes. And so being able to provide that single source of truth for Dapr troubleshooting across, your applications and your infrastructure components is super valuable, or what we found is super valuable from a Conductor perspective. Conductor free out of the box comes with around 15 built-in graphs per application. So, there's a ton of different visualizations that you kind of get for free, which often are not like something that is prioritized for a development environment, right? So, maybe you're building out those Grafana dashboards for, your upper level environments, but being able to have kind of these pre-built monitoring dashboards and even, default alerts for things like app component errors and crash loop backoffs. Both of those are really nice to have kind of just set up for you on your development cluster. And then last but not least, just insights into actor usage. So, if you are a big fan of the Dapr actor pattern and API, it can be difficult to see exactly what's kind of going on in terms of what reminders are firing, what timers are firing, and like what invocation calls are being made within your actors without building out some of these custom graphs, as I mentioned. And that's also something that you kind of get out of the box with Conductor free. So that being said, I'll just hop over again to the browser, and I'll just kind of walk through a little bit of some of the other features. So this is the kind of dashboard, and as Fernando mentioned, you get a single cluster connection out of the box with Conductor free. And so I have, that same order system he was talking about before. If I pop into the cluster itself, I can see, a number of things kind of off the bat. Things like my cluster insights, which are, specific to the cluster level and control plane level insights and metrics. So if I dive a little bit into that control plane, I can see that, my control plane pods for the sidecar injector, for the operator, placement service, and sentry are all up. I can also take a peek into that CPU and memory usage over time. So all the graphs in Conductor have a view where you can kind of like change that time span. And that's again broken up by the four main Dapr control plane pods. Other thing I can do from this dashboard is if I head down to this application insights level, this is going to be all of the application specific, metrics and errors and advisories that are, pertinent to my Dapr apps. And so if I look on the left-hand side here, I can look at all of my Dapr sidecar logs that are automatically scraped for me, again, by that Conductor agent. and the conductor agent logs collector. And what this is going to do is show me only the error, fatal, and warning log levels. So if I pop in here, these are all the ones for the past, 1 hour. So Conductor's kind of doing this for you, where you can kind of just take a peek into what is going on in your cluster without needing to set any of this up yourself. So taking a look at this first one, this is telling me, hey, I have error listing this component. I have a Redis password not found. So this is going to give me the log when it happened. It's also going to point me to the application that this is happening in. So if I jump to my application specific view from this point, I can see a number of things about my Dapr enabled app. I can view the Dapr app ID, which in this case is the loyalty service. So this is a service in my system that keeps track of loyalty points. I also have, a few other, Kubernetes specific things like the pod status, the Dapr version of that sidecar, if there are any app or Dapr container restarts, things like that. I can also view that Dapr annotations that my pod is actually deployed with, right? So if you have played around with Dapr and Kubernetes, you often have to configure these from in your pod spec in order to change various things like the log level and things like that. So it's handy to kind of to peek into those and see what's going on. Also have some resource management stuff. Again, if you want to right size your applications from a development perspective, it's going to kind of give me an idea in terms of how much of that CPU and memory request and limit is actually being used within my cluster. And then we do provide, again, this is some of the graphs I was talking about. So things like CPU and memory usage broken across by both application container and Dapr sidecar, and then also just the throughput. So as you know, probably Dapr has APIs with both HTTP and gRPC, and so you can view those kind of broken up for you by these graphs. So I can see, how many times this my loyalty endpoint has been called, and if you look at the metric series themselves, you can see that they're broken up from application to Dapr sidecar, and then vice versa. So if I had, my Dapr sidecar calling into my app, I would see that. Oh yeah, right here. Then I would see that broken up as well. I can also see the components that my specific application has loaded, right? And this is something I was talking about that is a common, I would say, developer concern, is really just configuring those component files and ensuring that the component initialization is working correctly within your dev environment. And you can see this one here, it's actually not working correctly. So I have a little active indicator that's showing on the left-hand side that's saying this is, in fact, being used by my loyalty service within the past 5 minutes. I have, the name of my loyalty or my state store in this case. I have the namespace. This is actually a Redis state store. And I can also take a peek at that YAML file, which is going to be, that specification of, the connection details to my underlying infrastructure resource. So in this case, I can look at what's actually deployed in my cluster. I can see, hey, I'm referencing a secret key reference. It's using the default secret store in Dapr, which is just Kubernetes secrets. And you can see I'm referencing a password this way. In this error that it's giving me from init is just saying, hey, error connecting to Redis. We can't find that password. So this is kind of pointing me in the direction of, hey, where I might want to look if my component is not initializing. I can also view that not in the component request per second, but within the component error rates as well. So if I head over to my cluster real quick, I can take a look at my secrets, and you can see I actually do have this Redis password, but if you remember correctly from this, my secret key reference, I'm actually have a double D within the reference here. So just kind of a spelling, like a fat finger error from my, cluster config. So if I wanted to, pop that in and redeploy this guy, I should see this actually go away. So I'm actually using hot reloading in Dapr, so I won't actually have to restart the sidecar. But if I reapply this one while removing that error that I had within my component, I should be able to head back to Conductor. Awesome, and see that has gone green, so that's initialized. So again, just kind of some insights into like what actually might be going on within my application without having to dive super deep into those Dapr sidecar logs or into Kubernetes and become like a Kubernetes expert, if you will. So that's one thing I wanted to show. The other thing I wanted to show was the applications and how to kind of view them across your cluster. So as Fernando mentioned really briefly, right, we have, a number of different Dapr apps running on our cluster here. And these are all of our application IDs, which are, that inherent app identity that Dapr gives your services. Then if I pop into the application visualizer, I can view all of these on a graph. So I can view, how these are connected between services. If I look at a legend on the bottom left here, I can see that those straight lines are service invocation calls, whereas those dotted ones are pub/sub. Can also, take a little bit of a peek into, what metrics might be making errors or what metrics might be causing like latency within my system. So you can kind of see I'm getting an error. It's a very small error percentage here. However, I'm getting an error from one of my service invocation calls to my order service. I could also view my components. So in this case, I have a Kafka message broker, and I can see, which applications are calling it, which applications, have metrics associated to those application calls, and then, which applications are subscribing. So we are using a workflow in this case, and I believe it's in .NET that's subscribing to one of the events on our Kafka message broker. And if I pop into this, I can see I'm receiving a number of events from that message broker. But I think that workflow is actually failing, given that the tasks, the activities within there are showing up as red. I can also view, from this level, I can also jump into the application itself. So again, kind of taking a look into that application view. And this is also where I can see these insights. So insights from a Conductor perspective are all these default alerts that are set up for you from, out of the box. So we have, I believe it's 12 different default alerts that are set up out of the box for Conductor free. But essentially, this is going to be for things like app component errors. So, application component errors are actually infrastructure errors that might be happening within your system, and they are be showing up within some of the Dapr metrics that are provided by the open source project. Again, this is all getting scraped by the agent from the Prometheus port on the sidecars, and we are surfacing that up, within some of these graphs. So if I take a peek into, this specific error rate, you can see that actually, I have a binding that's actually failing. This is, in this case, this is the create operation for, yeah, it's a Redis binding in this case. So I can, also look at the specific YAML file for this guy. And it's initialized, it's good, but the actual call itself, is actually failing. Looks like it's been failing for a couple hours my time. So again, kind of just pointing to where you'd want to look for, debugging and error resolution here. So, from here, what I can do is I can flip over kind of to my cluster. I can take a peek at some of those logs. Let's see what we have. I can also like a look at the Dapr sidecar logs. As I mentioned, right, we're not pulling all the Dapr sidecar logs in, only some of the warning, fatal, and error level logs. So, in this case, I have a bunch of debug logs that are showing up as, RPC error invoking out binding, missing key in my request metadata. So just kind of something that's going to show me, hey, I should double check into my binding output call within my code and see what that key is being set to in my code base. So again, just kind of a little bit of a loop in terms of the debugging experience there. And then last but not least, I just wanted to show you a couple more things. So that was the applications tab and the applications graph view, but we also have our components. So I did talk about these briefly from the app level, but we also can see, things like the configuration. So essentially any other Dapr resources that you have living within your cluster, you can take a peek and kind of discover what else might be deployed from that level. I can also view my subscriptions. So as mentioned, there are both programmatic and declarative subscriptions, both showing up here kind of alongside each other. And if there are any rules, that might be specific to or routes that might be specific to that subscription, those will also show up in Conductor Free. Resiliency policies as well, same kind of thing, right? So, there's a number of scoped applications for resiliency policies. I can see, what that resiliency policy looks like. It's going to show me that scopes within that YAML file. And then I can also, navigate to those apps and see some metrics for how that resiliency policy is being applied at the application level. Last but not least, I also have an actors view, and this is super key, for anyone who might be using the Dapr Actors API. I have a single actor application deployed on my cluster. I can view, there's only one active actor instance currently within my system. I can see what pod that's actually being deployed on. So if you have a number of these active actor instances, you might have a number of different pods because they can live essentially on different pods within your system based on where the placement service puts them, placement table puts them. I can also view a number of metrics around actors. So, let's change this to maybe the past hour. I can see, the invocation rate. So how many times my demo actor application has been invoked the past hour, if there are any errors that are associated with that actor itself. And then, if that actor has any timers or reminders associated with it, I'm also going to be able to see, if there are any reminders being fired or, if there are any errors for those reminders itself. So just kind of, again, giving you more visibility into what might actually be going on in your system without kind of having to set any of this kind of up out of the box. That was mostly what I wanted to show from a Conductor perspective. If I now flip over, I think we had just one more slide, just because so I just wanted to, show you guys that this is the Conductor free version. This was released, 3 weeks ago. So it's pretty new. Please, go sign up for an account. If you have been a user of like the Dapr dashboard in the past and you want another way to visualize your Dapr applications on Kubernetes, you get a free account and there's really no strings attached here. You can also subscribe to the Dapr newsletter or, join our other community on Discourse. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Cecil, I know you wanted to open up for questions, maybe?
Yeah, I did. But first of all, thank the two of you for showing us that. For me, that was actually my first full demo of like seeing Conductor. So I was really I'm just sitting here like taking notes. I'm like, oh, that was cool. Right. So it was really good to kind of just see it in action and see a lot of the value that it adds for folks running Dapr, where we are running Dapr locally or in the cloud or on some hosted service somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
When you said Dapr dashboard, like it clicked for a second, and I looked at it. I'm like, it does look a lot like the Dapr dashboard. At least the user experience of it does, just with like more features and more support and graphs and charts and all this types of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like some of the, again, of course, the Dapr dashboard was just a visual tool, but, just some of the things like the ability to do upgrades and apply, advisories as well as like some of the other things. But for sure, that's what people tell us. They were like, I love the Dapr dashboard, and then, but yeah, we have some great users of Conductor now too. So.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions. For folks that are watching, feel free to go ahead and drop your questions in the chat if you have any questions for Alice and Fernando. And then while you go ahead and do that, I have tons of questions because, again, I've never seen it before. So I have all kinds of stuff I want to ask you too. So with regards to Dapr API support, so you showed a section, one of you showed a section where you can kind of go in and change the version, like roll forward or roll back, like different versions of Dapr. Mm-hmm. In terms of so I'm kind of looking at this as like my DevOps dashboard with regards to Dapr. That's kind of like how I'm looking at it a little bit.
Totally.
Are there APIs that are not supported like in the space, like APIs that I can't get information about? Because I think you showed us resiliency a little bit. You showed us, some component configurations and whatnot. Are there like, other APIs that I can get more information about, or, things that you guys are still adding to it?
Yeah, good question. We have a lot of, uptick kind of on the developer side right now. So I think I mentioned, right now you can see on the components page, you can get a real view into what your components look like while they're deployed on Kubernetes, but we're adding a editor in here. So essentially you'll be able to kind of go in, edit these components, not apply them directly because that we realize it's a security risk for some of our customers, but essentially just download them and then apply them yourself onto your cluster. And it has like kind of built-in YAML like debugging and ensuring that the metadata values are correct, for that component specification. Validation, that's the word I was looking for. And then, to your question for the APIs that we don't support, we actually don't show the configuration API today. So this is configurations as far as the CRD itself goes, but there is no way to see like the configuration API itself. And then we do have, you saw some stuff around the actors tab. If of course, workflows do use actors behind the scenes, but we are showing just kind of a minimal amount of the workflow, the underlying workflow metrics today, and not like a full viewer of the workflow as well.
Yeah, as a fan of Dapr, and particularly someone that uses it more so as a hobbyist, I think this adds like a tremendous amount of value for me, just being able to like see what's happening like inside of my Dapr cluster. Right? Like
Totally. Yeah.
A lot of great stuff to it.
Sweet. Yeah, great feedback.
So
Questions.
another question I had for you was, so I saw that obviously you can have clusters and you can list your clusters out. What happens if I have a deployment that spans multiple clusters? Like, is there like, can I group my clusters or look at them in a way that spans multiple places like that?
Yeah, so in the free version, actually, you can only add a single cluster. So that's what we've limited to. You can see the little cluster connection
Gotcha.
is grayed out. So we've reached our max in terms of our free plan. But we do have an enterprise plan, which of course has more features like certificate rotation, which is a huge one from an operational perspective, as well as a bunch more production level security, resiliency, observability, advisories, things like that. In terms of cross cluster communication, it's a tongue twister. It is, as you might know, like there isn't a way to do that out of the box with open source Dapr. There are many users who have done that in the open source community, like via different routes. Like I know of people who have used an open source tool called Scupper. I've known people that have used other various different communication mechanisms for cross cluster. There's no grouping mechanism today within Conductor, but it's an interesting thought. I would say, if Dapr does kind of go down that cross cluster communication route, then that would definitely be something we would think about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let me take a look through the chat. Let me see if anyone in here has any other questions. I don't think so.
Okay.
All right, and I'm just going to pull up that link again really quickly because you showed us that earlier. So again, if folks are interested in learning more and trying out the free version of Dapr Conductor, there's a link at the bottom of the screen. We'll also make sure we include the link in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, because I know a lot of you are not on YouTube, we'll have a link in the description. You could go ahead and check it out and make sure you let Alice and Fernando know what you think about it, and any type of feedback you have.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's great.
Awesome. So I'm going to borrow the screen for a little bit, and now we're going to do a little bit of show and tell. Oh, really quickly, we got a comment. Ancient IT guy says we use it for a very large environment. So there you go. So we got some Conductor fans in the chat there already. So that's awesome. All right, so let's talk about the community show and tell. Now, the last community call we did, that was our show number 100. And we didn't get to do the community call because you folks had lots of questions and we had lots of things to talk about. Well, I have so many community links. I don't think I can share all of them with you today. So if you know that you shared with the blog post or a video or something like that, and we don't highlight it today, I promise we'll have it in for the next one. There's just so many of them, and I don't want to spend like 20 minutes like kind of going through links and stuff like that. So let's start going through this really quick. So here are some of the blog posts that got released in the last 2 weeks or so. Lots of great stuff about like Dapr and Spin. SpinCube, I think, is like a WebAssembly thing for Kubernetes, being able to run your application in WASI. Have a couple of blog posts on those. Lots of blog posts about Azure Container Apps. For folks that aren't familiar, Azure Container Apps is a hosting option, not just for Dapr, but for your application as well, right? You can have your sidecar and your app running up there. So that's a great hosting option, and we have a few blog posts in here about that. What else? Well, let's kind of move forward a little quick. We have some videos. Speaking of Diagrid, over on the Diagrid YouTube channel, there's the Dapr 113 highlights. So for folks that didn't know, 113 is out. Tons of great features, bug fixes, performance improvements, all that types of stuff. So if you're interested, make sure you head over to the Diagrid YouTube channel and check that out. Over on the Fairmont channel, the folks from Zeiss, I think it's called Zeiss, talk about how they use WebAssembly in the enterprise. Again, lots of WebAssembly stuff happening now, particularly with Dapr. So again, if that's the space that you're interested in, make sure that you subscribe and pay attention. Also, friend of the show, Nick, he did a presentation at Azure Cosmos DB Day or Cosmos DB Con. That was just a couple of weeks ago. The video's up right now. You can go and check that out. And also, kickstart your Dapr development on Kubernetes. And I think that was actually done by Alex and Fernando. So we have our celebrities here that were in the video talking about again how to run on Kubernetes. Now what else we got? We got Mark did a presentation interview with the folks over at TFIR. I think they interview like tons of folks, a lot of leaders in the technology space. So if you're interested to hear what Mark's thought about like cloud native and Dapr and some of the things that they're going to be working on going forward, that's a great interview to check out. And to end on a little bit of a fun note, our other community manager, Mark, created this really cool Dapr game. Make sure you go ahead and check it out there in the link below, and try it out, and make sure you let them know what you think.
There's only 4 levels to that game, but there isn't anyone that you can beat. There's no boss you can beat. We tried to beat that game forever at KubeCon, so I've spent a lot of time staring at that game.
Is it one of those games that just goes on forever and ever and ever, and you're just in this constant loop?
Yeah, it's like he needs Mark's actually on the other side, playing you back, right?
Yeah, that's funny. That's awesome. Well, folks, if you're interested in that game, make sure you go ahead and try that out. And also for all of you, thank you so much for being community supporters. If you scan that QR code that's on the screen right now, it'll take you over to Holopin, and you'll be able to claim this Dapr badge. And not only do we have badges for Dapr for just being a community supporter, but recently, I'm going to head over to the community repo over the Dapr community repo. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So if you do like this, if you come over to community, right? So this is, github.com/Dapr/community, and you head over to presentations. There's a section here that tells you how you can get your own presenter badge, right? So again, Alex and Fernando, if you don't have this badge already, I think you officially qualify. You should be able to claim this badge. But for other folks, if you're doing presentations about Dapr, conference talks, interviews, meetup sessions, and stuff like that about Dapr, let us know. Come in, and you can add your entry to the bottom of this table that'll be here, and we'll send you a badge, which I think is really cool. And then we not only just do that for presentations. There's also one here for blog posts as well. And again, it's in the same place, right? You head over to github.com/Dapr/community, and then just take a look at that blog post folder, and you'll be able to claim this badge here as well. So a couple of goodies for the community. If you're a fan of Dapr and you've been supporting us for a while, we definitely just want to give something back to you, so you know how much we appreciate all the stuff that you all do for us. And last but not least, I'm going to full screen this really quickly. So if this is your first time coming to the show, if this is the first presentation that you've seen about Dapr, here are some community resources that you can go and check out to learn a little bit more about Dapr and what it does, and the space that it kind of occupies in the world of cloud native. So we have the Dapr website. Obviously, we also have YouTube and Twitter, which some of y'all are watching us on right now. Thank you so much again for being here. Then we also have the Discord channel where a lot of conversation is happening around Dapr, around the different APIs, around the different integrations they have, around the different SDKs, and even folks talking about new features they'd love to see and shared feedback. So if you're interested in getting involved and just being a part of the conversation about the evolution of Dapr over time, make sure you head over to the Discord channel to be able to have some of those conversations. And also, you can also check out the GitHub link. That'll take you to all the different repos and particularly the quick starts. We can try out some really cool, interesting integrations that you can just get started with Dapr really quickly. But with that being said, I think that's all we have for this week's community call. Alex, Fernando, I don't know if you had any last words or anything extra you wanted to leave folks with.
No, yeah, good from our side. Just, go sign up for a free trial and, send us some feedback. We're always keen to hear feedback from everyone. So thanks. Yeah. Keep posting that link. It's funny being on YouTube and having these, click the link below. I'm not so fancy. We're so fancy now. We're not on Zoom anymore.
It is really fancy. Yeah, it is really fancy.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Awesome. And thank everyone for watching. Again, join us in another 2 weeks or so. We'll have another Dapr community call. But until then, take care and we'll see you later. Bye, everybody.
See y'all.